People tell you to fake it until you make it. The advice is standard career counseling fodder. Adopt the dress code, mirror the posture of your superiors, agree with the consensus, and slide into the hierarchy. But they rarely discuss the maintenance costs of the mask. When you spend every waking hour simulating someone else's values, your original identity does not wait in reserve. It degrades. To survive in an environment that was not built for you, you must treat your natural instincts as liabilities. You edit your accent, filter your reactions, and laugh at jokes that are not funny. You do this because the gatekeepers of wealth and power do not look for talent. They look for compliance and familiarity. In 1830, Stendhal documented this cold calculation in The Red and the Black. It is a study of social climbing, detailing how systematic hypocrisy can be used as an offensive weapon. Let us look at the protagonist, the outsider. He is 19 years old, living in a provincial timber town. His father and older brothers are physical laborers, men who measure worth by the width of a pine plank and the raw muscle required to lift it. The outsider has neither the build nor the inclination for manual work. He is small, pale, and possesses quiet, dark eyes. Instead of working the saws, he reads. His father finds him sitting near the machinery with a book. The older man strikes him across the face, knocking the volume into the rapid current of the river below. In this household, a book is not a sign of intelligence. It is a theft of labor. The outsider knows he must leave this place or be crushed by it. He looks at the world around him. A generation earlier, under Napoleon, a young man of low birth could rise through the military. You put on a red uniform, survived a few cavalry charges, and gained a title. That was the path of the sword, the red. But the empire is gone. The monarchy has returned and the aristocracy has reclaimed its ground. The military path is closed to the poor. The new route to power is quiet, slow, and dark. It belongs to the church, the black. The outsider does not care about theology. He cares about leverage. He begins his preparation. He spends months memorizing the entire New Testament in Latin. He does not seek spiritual enlightenment. He treats the text like a deck of cards for a magic trick. He practices reciting passages with absolute precision. He learns to weep on command during prayers. He studies the local clergy, observing which gestures elicit sympathy and which words project humility. He tests his performance on the local parish priest. The priest is astonished by the boy's apparent devotion and intellect. He sees a potential saint. The outsider notes the priest's reaction, discovering how easily the powerful are blinded by their own desire to find piety in others. The priest recommends him to the town's highest authority, the mayor. The mayor is a man consumed by status. He has recently learned that his chief rival in the district has hired a private tutor to display his wealth. The mayor cannot allow himself to be outdone. He needs a tutor for his children, not to educate them, but to serve as a visible luxury item, like a carriage or a set of silver. The mayor enters negotiations with the outsider's father. The two men barter over the boy's salary as if they are pricing a mule. The father demands more money. The mayor pays it because his pride is at stake. The outsider watches this transaction. He notes that the wealthy will pay premium prices to soothe their own vanity. The outsider arrives at the mayor's mansion. He stands in the entrance hall. The ceilings are high, the air smells of beeswax and expensive wood, and the servants look at him with quiet disdain. He makes a strategic assessment. If he acts too intelligent, he will breed suspicion. If he appears ambitious, the mayor will dismiss him as a threat. He must play the part of the harmless, devout peasant. He lowers his head. He slumps his shoulders to make his small frame look even less imposing. He keeps his hands clasped in front of his chest, mimicking the posture of a tired seminarian. When the mayor speaks to him, the outsider responds in a soft, hesitant voice, keeping his eyes fixed on the floorboards. The double doors at the end of the hall open. The mayor's wife enters the room. She is a quiet, sheltered woman, accustomed to the rigid, predictable conversation of her husband's social circle. She has spent days worrying about the arrival of this new tutor. She expected a course, loud peasant who would bring dirt and violence into her home. Instead, she sees a pale, delicate youth who looks terrified. She observes his trembling hands, his downcast eyes, and his fragile posture. The tension leaves her jaw, her shoulders drop. The outsider watches her reaction from beneath his lowered brow. He does not see a woman to protect, nor does he see an employer. He sees a vulnerability in the household. He sees his first target. The outsider observes the household dynamics over the spring months. The mayor treats his wife like an ornament, a possession that reflects his local status. The outsider, sitting at the dinner table in his cheap black coat, is positioned below the family, a salaried subordinate. The mayor speaks to him with the patronizing tone of a man addressing a clever pet. The outsider's resentment does not paralyze him, it sharpens his focus. He looks at the mayor's wife. She is 30, beautiful, and isolated within her own privilege. Her husband treats her with proprietary indifference. The outsider sees his opportunity. Seducing her is not an act of romantic desire. It is a way to strike at the mayor's most prized possession. It is an act of class warfare. If he can make her yield to him, he will have defeated the mayor in his own home. He will have forced the ruling class to submit to a peasant. He plans his approach with the precision of a military campaign. On warm summer evenings, the family sits in the garden under the shade of the lime trees. The darkness provides cover. The outsider decides that he must take her hand. He does not wait for a natural opening. He sets a rigid deadline. He looks at the dial of his watch by the dim starlight. He sets the limit, 10 o'clock. If his hand does not touch hers by the final stroke of the town clock, he will return to his room and end his life. He uses the threat of self-destruction to override his fear of rejection. As the hour approaches, his breathing remains shallow. His hand is cold and wet with perspiration. At the first stroke of 10, he reaches out through the dark and clasps her hand. She pulls back in surprise. He tightens his grip, holding her fingers with a firm, unyielding pressure. After a struggle that lasts only seconds, her hand goes limp. She allows him to keep it. The outsider experiences no warmth, no rush of desire. He experiences only the dry, clinical satisfaction of an officer who has successfully occupied an enemy position. The plan has worked. The gesture changes the dynamic of the house. The mayor's wife is consumed by a conflict between her religious devotion and this new, intense focus. She begins to look at him during meals. She leaves books in the garden where he can find them. She falls in love with him, driven by his apparent vulnerability and her own deep loneliness. But a crack develops in the outsider's strategy. He has spent his life in a household defined by physical violence and contempt. He has never experienced a soft voice, a gentle touch, or genuine concern for his well-being. When the mayor's wife speaks to him with tenderness, his analytical distance begins to erode. He starts to look forward to their meetings. He stops calculating his words before he speaks. He laughs naturally. He listens to her stories about her childhood without looking for tactical leverage. The mask, worn too loose, begins to slip. He is no longer just playing the role of the lover. He has let the emotion penetrate his defenses. The domestic sphere is not a vacuum. In a small provincial town, every movement is watched. An anonymous letter is delivered to the mayor. It contains no proof, only suggestions. But in Verrières, suggestions are enough to destroy a reputation. The mayor's reaction is governed entirely by fear of public ridicule. If he makes a scene, the town will know he has been cuckolded by a peasant. He must remove the tutor without admitting the reason. He hints at financial adjustments and suggests it is time for the tutor to seek advancement elsewhere. The outsider reads the situation instantly. He sees the stiffening of the mayor's posture, the sudden coldness in his instructions. He knows that his time is up. If he stays to fight for his love, he will be exposed, his prospects in the church will be ruined, and he will be sent back to the timber mill. He prepares for his departure. He looks at his reflection in the small mirror in his attic room. He has allowed himself to become soft. By letting genuine affection enter the equation, he lost his strategic objectivity. He allowed a target to become a person, and in doing so, he nearly destroyed his career before it began. He packs his few possessions, 2 shirts, his black cassock, and his hidden volume of Napoleon's memoirs. He does not write a farewell note. He does not seek one last meeting in the garden. To see her would be to invite hesitation. He walks out of the estate before dawn, heading toward the theological seminary at Besançon. It is a place known for its rigid discipline, its cold stone walls, and its complete lack of comfort. He will enter it not as a believer, but as a student of power, determined to keep his emotions under lock and key. The outsider enters the theological seminary at Besançon. The seminary is not a sanctuary of high intellect. Its rooms are filled with the sons of provincial farmers, young men who chose the priesthood not out of spiritual calling, but because it represents a reliable escape from manual labor. For them, the church is a business that guarantees 3 meals a day and a warm bed. The outsider expects this to be an environment of rigorous debate, subtle Latin translation, and philosophical study. He is mistaken. During his first week, he demonstrates his exceptional memory. When questioned by his instructors, he recites complex theological proofs and translates difficult Greek passages on sight. The response is not admiration, it is silence. His classmates look at him with a flat, cold hostility. His instructors note his performance with suspicion rather than approval. The outsider has committed a fundamental error in the architecture of social survival. He assumed that a seminary valued excellence. In reality, it values conformity. To his peers, his intelligence is an insult. It highlights their own limitations and threatens their future prospects for wealthy parishes. To his superiors, a peasant boy who thinks too quickly is a potential heretic, a proud spirit who refuses to bend. In a closed hierarchy, brilliance does not elevate you. It isolates you. It marks you as a target. The outsider quickly observes the landscape. The students who are popular, the ones who receive praise and easy assignments, are those who speak in platitudes. They look vacant during lectures. They never question a text, and they never offer an original thought. He realizes that to survive, he must adapt his strategy. He must learn the art of blending in with the mediocre. He begins a systematic campaign of self-suppression. He stops answering questions with precise accuracy. When called upon, he hesitates, stumbles over his words, and offers dry, uninspired answers. He spends hours in front of his small washroom mirror, studying his own face. He practices wiping the intensity from his dark eyes. He learns to slacken his jaw slightly to project a look of dull, docile acceptance. During meals, he forces himself to eat the greasy mutton and stale bread without showing his natural disgust. When his roommates talk of their small, vulgar dreams, of landing a parish where they can eat pork every Sunday and collect tithes from the local peasants, he nods and agrees. He learns to mimic their slow, heavy walk and their simple mannerisms. He masters the discipline of total, suffocating hypocrisy. He makes himself invisible by becoming exactly like the crowd he despises. This performance of quiet mediocrity is so consistent that it eventually catches the eye of the seminary's director, Father Perard. Perard is a severe, uncompromising man who has spent his life fighting the corruption of the local clergy. He is surrounded by opportunists, and he has grown highly observant. He watches the outsider. While the other faculty members see only a quiet, somewhat slow peasant boy, Perard notes the rigid self-control required to maintain that silence. He recognizes that the outsider's humility is too calculated to be genuine, but he respects the sheer willpower behind it. Perard summons the outsider to his private study. The room is cold, lit by a single candle. "You have been playing a part," Perard says, his voice flat. The outsider keeps his eyes fixed on the floor. He does not speak. "Do not bother denying it," Perard continues, sliding a sheet of paper across the desk. "The Marquis de la Mole has written to me from Paris. He requires a secretary, someone who can write 30 letters a day, translate Latin, and keep his mouth shut. The position pays well. You will live in his mansion. The outsider looks at the letter. The name of the elite patron is known throughout France. It is a gate into the highest circles of power in the country. You are too clever for this seminary, Perard says. If you stay here, your classmates will find a way to destroy you. Go to Paris. The outsider bows. He does not offer thanks. He does not drop his submissive posture. He simply says, I will do as I am directed. The outsider stands on the pavement of a gray, rain-soaked Paris street. Before him is the mansion of the elite patron. The stone walls are massive, the tall windows shuttered against the noise of the city. The house is silent, projecting an aura of ancient, unassailable wealth. He adjusts the collar of his plain black provincial coat. He has survived the physical violence of his father's lumber mill. He has survived the psychological warfare of the seminary. He has learned how to hide his mind and control his actions. He reaches out and pulls the heavy brass bell beside the gate. The outsider sits at a mahogany desk in the library of the Marquis de la Mole. He has traded his coarse provincial cassock for a tailored black evening suit, a gift from his employer. His duties are vast and confidential. He manages the leases of the Marquis's extensive northern estates, answers letters from bishops and ministers, and sits in on private political gatherings where conservative nobles plot to preserve their influence. The elite patron notes his efficiency. The outsider does not complain, he does not ask questions, and his handwriting is flawless. He is given more sensitive tasks, taking dictation on secret political meetings where conservative nobles plot to maintain their grip on the state. He is privy to secrets that could destroy careers. He becomes indispensable. Yet as he moves through this new world, he is accompanied by a constant, quiet tension. Every evening, he is invited to dine with the family and their guests, dukes, counts, and foreign ambassadors. He eats off silver plates and drinks from crystal glasses, but he remains hyper-aware of his origin. His hands, though clean, were shaped by the timber mill. He watches how the guests hold their cutlery, how they tilt their heads when they laugh, and how they use subtle inflections to signal their lineage. He treats every dinner party like an interrogation. He analyzes his own speech, keeping his sentences short. If he speaks too long, his provincial accent might show. He checks his posture, his expression, his tone. He is a spy in enemy territory, knowing that a single mismatched word or a misplaced gesture will reveal him as a peasant intruder. But as the weeks pass, his perspective shifts. Before arriving in Paris, the outsider believed the aristocracy possessed a natural superiority, a refinement of mind that justified their power. Now, observing them up close in the drawing rooms of the Faubourg Saint-Germain, that belief vanishes. The salons are silent, save for the murmuring of polite, empty phrases. The young noblemen are immaculate, their hair styled, their waistcoats embroidered, but their eyes are vacant. They are paralyzed by a deep, chronic boredom. They are terrified of saying anything original because originality invites controversy, and controversy is bad form. To survive in this society, one must never express a strong opinion, never show genuine passion, and never introduce a new idea. It is a class defined by stagnation. The rooms are filled with historic titles, but there is no energy, no hunger, no intellect. Then there is the aristocratic daughter. She is 19, proud, and possesses a sharp, mocking intellect. Her family expects her to marry one of the wealthy, submissive young dukes who follow her around the salon like trained spaniels. The outsider watches them court her. The young Duke of Croisenois bows low, offering her a glass of punch and paying her a highly rehearsed compliment. The aristocratic daughter responds with a slight, dismissive nod. Her fingers drum impatiently on her silk fan. She is exhausted by their predictability. In her private hours, she reads history books about the bloody, violent era of the French wars of religion, when nobles were warriors who risked their heads for power and passion. She wants danger. She wants to be challenged. She wants a rebellion against the suffocating boredom of her life. The outsider observes her from his corner of the room. He does not join the circle of her admirers. He stands near the bookshelves, silent and self-contained. He notices that she looks at him. At first, it is the casual glance one reserves for a piece of furniture. But as the evenings pass, her gaze lingers. He does not look down when she stares. He meets her eyes with a flat, cold indifference that she has never experienced from a man. He calculates the potential gain. If he can conquer her, he secures everything. A marriage to the daughter of the Marquis de la Mole means an instant title, immense wealth, and a permanent place at the top of the social pyramid. The timber mill will be a distant, impossible memory. But the risk is absolute. The Marquis is his patron, the man who controls his livelihood. If the family suspects the secretary is attempting to seduce the daughter, he will be thrown into the street without a reference, his career destroyed, his prospects finished. He analyzes the failed suitors. They lose because they flatter her. They show their subservience. They treat her like a goddess which only bores her. He realizes his strategy must be the opposite. To capture her interest, he cannot bow to her. He cannot be a servant or a supplicant. To conquer her, he must play the part of a sovereign. To capture her, the outsider designs a strategy based on withholding. When the aristocratic daughter speaks to him, he answers in brief, dry sentences. If she enters the library, he does not look up from his ledgers. When she attempts to mock his provincial background, he does not defend himself. He merely stares at her with a quiet, analytical amusement, as if observing the tantrums of a child. He refuses to play the part of her courtier. In their intellectual debates, he uses his sharp memory and cold logic to dissect her arguments, showing no deference to her rank. This is a deliberate push-and-pull. He draws her in with his competence, then pushes her away with his indifference. This calculation yields immediate results. The aristocratic daughter has spent her life surrounded by men who capitulate to her every whim. The outsider's refusal to flatter her makes him a mystery. She begins to watch him constantly, searching for a crack in his defense. She begins to associate his low birth not with vulgarity, but with a raw, dangerous energy that the noblemen in her circle lack. She convinces herself that he is like the bold, ruthless figures of the 16th century, men who carved out empires with their own hands. His silence becomes depth, his arrogance becomes majesty. She is hooked, but the conquest is not a straight line. Her aristocratic pride is a formidable defense mechanism. After their first night of intimacy, she wakes up horrified by her own vulnerability. The next morning, she reverts to her social position. She speaks to him in front of the household servants with freezing condescension, demanding that he fetch her books or carry out menial tasks. She uses her status to punish him for the power he now holds over her. The outsider finds himself trapped in a volatile cycle. One day she is his, the next she treats him like a footman. His calculations are failing. He knows that if he shows anger or hurt, he yields the upper hand. He must find a way to shift the balance permanently. He seeks counsel from a worldly acquaintance, a Russian prince who understands the mechanics of vanity. The advice is precise: triangulation. To secure a woman's commitment, you must direct your attention elsewhere. The outsider executes the plan with clinical detachment. He acquires a volume of 50 pre-written love letters intended for high society women. He does not edit them. He copies them out by hand, errors and all, and addresses them to a highly religious, older widow of high rank who frequents the salon. He delivers these letters daily. He does not care about the widow. He simply ensures the aristocratic daughter witnesses his quiet, constant pursuit. He ignores her completely while appearing consumed by this new target. The tactic works with devastating force. The aristocratic daughter, seeing his attention redirected, experiences a severe blow to her vanity. She cannot tolerate being replaced, especially by a woman she considers her intellectual inferior. The uncertainty breaks her pride. She throws herself at him, abandoning all reserve. The consequence of this surrender is immediate. She becomes pregnant. The situation is a disaster for the family's reputation. The aristocratic daughter refuses to be hidden or sent away. She confronts her father, the elite patron, declaring her intention to marry the secretary. The elite patron is trapped. A public scandal would destroy his political standing and ruin his family's ancient name. His vanity demands that his daughter's husband be a man of standing. Since the outsider is a peasant, the patron must manufacture a new reality. He uses his influence to buy the outsider a noble title, Julian de la Verne. He purchases him a commission as a lieutenant in a prestigious regiment. The transformation is complete. The peasant boy from the timber mill has bypassed centuries of class hierarchy through calculated moves and psychological leverage. The outsider stands in his private quarters, looking at his reflection. He wears a high-collared coat adorned with gold epaulets, a polished leather belt, and a sword at his hip. He raises his chin. The posture is flawless. The mask has become indistinguishable from the man. He has won the game. He has faked it and he has made it. The outsider's success is near its peak. He is in Strasbourg, performing his duties as a lieutenant in his regiment. His correspondence with the aristocratic daughter is frequent. She is arranging the final details of their wedding. The elite patron has resigned himself to the match, having already purchased the noble title and the commission. The outsider's future is secure. He has climbed from the sawdust of the provincial mill to the upper echelon of French society. Then, a letter arrives at the Marquis's mansion in Paris. It is from the mayor's wife, the outsider's first conquest. She did not write it out of malice. Her local confessor, a severe, fanatical priest, has discovered her past adultery. He has threatened her with eternal damnation, forcing her to dictate a letter to the Marquis as an act of penance to save her soul. The letter is a clinical autopsy of the outsider's behavior. It describes him as a cold, systematic predator. It states that his apparent piety is a cover, that his sole talent is the manipulation of wealthy households, and that he targets the wives of his employers as a means of establishing a foothold in their lives. It warns the Marquis that the young man does not care for his daughter or his family, but is driven entirely by a restless, parasitic ambition. The Marquis is not merely angry, he is deeply humiliated. He has been deceived by a peasant. He summons the outsider back to Paris. The meeting is quiet. There is no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. The Marquis simply hands him the letter. The outsider reads the familiar handwriting of the only woman who had ever shown him genuine tenderness. He looks up. The Marquis informs him that the wedding is cancelled. His noble title is revoked. His commission in the regiment is terminated. He is ordered to leave the house immediately. In a single afternoon, the elaborate construct of his social rise is dismantled. At this point, a practical opportunist would begin to formulate a defense. He would write to the aristocratic daughter, play on her rebellion, or invent a lie to discredit the letter. He has the intellect and the vocabulary to rebuild the facade. But he does not. The cognitive weight of his constant performance has become too heavy. For years, he has suppressed his speech, his gestures, his anger, and his pride. He has lived under the total, exhausting discipline of the black, the path of calculated submission. With his exposure, that discipline collapses. The red takes over. This is the raw, violent pride of his youth, the instinct of the soldier who does not negotiate but strikes. He does not want to salvage his career. He wants to destroy the source of his ruin. His ambition is replaced by a cold, quiet desire for vengeance. He walks to a gunsmith's shop in Paris. He buys 2 pocket pistols and a box of ammunition. He rents a horse and begins the journey back to Verrières. He rides for 2 days straight, barely stopping to sleep or eat. His face is pale, covered in road dust, and his eyes are hollow. He does not think of the consequences. He is driven by a singular, mechanical focus. He arrives in his hometown on a Sunday morning. The townspeople are filing into the local church for high mass. The outsider joins the crowd, slipping into the back of the building. He is wearing his plain black coat, his face obscured by the dim light of the nave. He looks toward the front of the church. There, kneeling at her bench, is the mayor's wife. She is praying, her head bowed, her hands clasped together. The outsider walks down the center aisle. He does not hesitate. He does not speak her name or make a scene. He pulls one of the pistols from his coat pocket. He aims at her back and fires. The blast echoes off the high stone vaults, filling the church with gray smoke. The mayor's wife starts to turn, her eyes wide. He fires the second shot. She collapses onto the stone floor. The congregation panics. People scream, scrambling over the wooden pews, rushing toward the exits. The outsider stands still in the middle of the aisle. The smell of sulfur and black powder hangs in the air. He drops the pistol. It clatters against the stone. He does not run. He does not attempt to escape into the crowd or ride away on his horse. He stands with his arms at his sides, waiting for the local guards to arrive and take him into custody. The performance is finished. The mask has finally fallen. The trial of the outsider begins in the packed courtroom of Besançon. The mayor's wife survived the shooting. She does not testify against him. Instead, she writes letters to the judges, pleading for his life and offering her full forgiveness. The aristocratic daughter uses her family's immense wealth to hire the most expensive advocates, trying to bribe the jury and secure his release. But the outsider refuses to cooperate with their efforts. He rejects the performance of the repentant sinner. He does not weep, nor does he offer a rehearsed speech of remorse to gain the jury's pity. When he is permitted to address the court, he stands straight, his shoulders square. He does not look at his lawyers. He looks directly at the jury, which is composed of wealthy landowners and minor provincial aristocrats. He speaks in a clear, measured voice, free of the submissive tone he cultivated for years. "Gentlemen," he says, "you see before you a peasant who rebelled against his low birth. I have no excuse for my actions, and I do not ask for your mercy. But you are not here simply to judge my crime. You are here to punish my audacity. You want to make an example of a commoner who dared to enter your exclusive circles, who sat at your tables, and who exposed the fragility of your social barriers. The speech is not an attempt to save his life. It is his final act of defiance. He strips away their legal pretense and exposes the class preservation at the heart of the prosecution. He forces them to condemn him not for his violence, but for his ambition. The jury returns a verdict of guilty. The sentence is death by the guillotine. In his final weeks in the cold prison cell, the outsider is visited by both women. The aristocratic daughter arrives with detailed plans for his escape, her mind still frantic with the drama of high society. The mayor's wife visits him in silence, sitting on the edge of his wooden cot, offering the same quiet presence he had once used as a weapon. In these moments, the outsider realized he no longer needs to calculate. He refuses to see the prison priests who come to offer him absolution. He refuses to use their vocabulary. On the morning of his execution, he walks out of the prison gates and climbs the wooden steps of the scaffold. His face is calm. His step is steady. He has spent his life playing the roles of the servant, the tutor, the priest, and the nobleman. In these final minutes, by accepting his fate without a mask, he is finally himself. He is executed not because he fired a pistol, but because he dared to challenge the boundaries of his world. Let us analyze the strategic mechanics of his rise and fall. First, the fragility of the synthetic persona. The modern concept of fake it till you make it assumes that once you reach the top, your past simply ceases to exist. This is a critical error. A life built entirely on a manufactured identity is highly vulnerable. You must spend constant energy covering your tracks, policing your associations, and monitoring your history. The more successful you become, the more valuable the truth of your origin becomes to your competitors. One letter, one witness from your past, can trigger a sudden and total collapse. The mask is not a permanent solution. It is a high-interest loan on a life that is not yours. Second, the cognitive cost of the mask. The outsider was more capable than the nobleman who sat above him. Yet, he could never leverage his intelligence to its full extent because he was forced to spend half his mental energy on managing his posture, checking his accent, and filtering his reactions. This is the practical reality of living a double life. When success requires you to suppress your actual thoughts, the achievement feels less like a victory and more like a hostage situation. Finally, the inevitability of emotional eruption. A strategist treats life like a game of chess, assuming that human beings are rational actors who can be manipulated indefinitely. But human nature is volatile. You can suppress pride, anger, and affection for a time, but these emotions do not disappear. They accumulate under pressure. When the outsider's calculations were shattered by the letter, his suppressed nature erupted with violent force. The strategist who ignores his own humanity will eventually be destroyed by it. The emotions you lock away to win the game are the very ones that will eventually burn the board down. The salons of 19th century Paris have faded, but the mechanics of social climbing remain unchanged. We still wear masks to secure the job, the partner, and the status. We still manage our public identities with careful calculation. But as you wear your mask, ask yourself, what is the cost of its maintenance? And who is left behind when you finally take it off?